The 2024-25 Italian Serie A has been madness. At some point, match day 12 precisely, we were dealing with a situation where the top 6 were separated by just 2 points. The gap may have increased a bit now, but it takes nothing away from the fact that this season, in Europe's top 5 leagues, the action has been in Italy's top flight. So what exactly makes the Italian Serie A as tough as it is? And why has this season in particular been a standout for competitiveness of the league? And in terms of the top 5, is the Italian Serie A the best in Europe? You probably know the drill by now. If you haven't subscribed to Football Historia yet, hit that button down below.
La Liga, they try to play the game. They try to build up the game from behind, and they really, even if they're not the level of the top team, they will try to play. Premier League, England, it's high pace. It's front and back. So even if you're high-level technical player, if you cannot manage the pace, you will not handle even with your technique. So that's pace. In Italy, it's very tactical. It's very studied. It's tactical. More important to defend than to attack. It's very difficult because when you come and play over in Serie A as a striker, and when you have a team that not only but focus a lot on defending, is not easy for the striker.
You know, Zlatan Ibrahimovic could actually have a future in punditry with that kind of analysis. But seriously, he's cleverly explained the difference between 3 of the top 5 leagues in Europe, and focusing on Serie A based on this context, Zlatan isn't wrong. But to understand why Serie A is gaining traction now, we need to have a quick look back into what the Italian top flight was, and for this one, you'd hear what one of the most successful managers in the competition in recent years has to say about Italian football.
What would you say is the biggest difference between the Italian League and the Premier League?
In the Italian League, if you are winning 1-0, 2-0, you can manage this situation. Here, it's impossible. It's impossible because in the last 10 minutes, anything can happen.
According to Antonio Conte, the Italian Serie A, in reference to the Premier League, is relatively straightforward. If a team has a 1 or 2-0 lead, they can manage to hang on and seal the win. He said this while still coaching Chelsea back in 2017, and at the time, he wouldn't have been wrong. Serie A before COVID was predictable. They won 9 straight titles between 2012 and 2021, but in that period, even with Juventus dominating, we still saw a particular trend that showed just how unpredictable Serie A could be. The league tables from the 2018-19 season to the 2021-22 season. As you can see from the top 4 standings, there was no constants in league positions. Juventus champions in the 2018-19 season, Napoli finished second. Napoli weren't even in the top 4 the next season. Same with Atalanta, the following 2 seasons they managed top 4 finishes and dropped out in the 2021-22 season, or the fact that Juventus won the league in 2 of the first 4 seasons highlighted above, and in the following 2, the Milan teams finished in the top 2 switching positions. Or in the 2022-23 season, Juventus, the most successful team in recent times in the competition, finished 7th. Napoli won the league for the first time in 33 years. Serie A in recent years began to change from a constant of Juventus winning the league to it being anyone's game. And that brings us to the current season. Napoli, at the time of recording this, currently sit top with a 4-point lead over Inter Milan, under former Juve and Inter head coach Antonio Conte. There are a lot of interesting narratives in this, which we'll get to later. But the point behind this is that Serie A has evolved from a one-team league to become anyone's game. But the interesting part about this, that it never really changed. Yes, Juventus dominated the league for that particular period, but as we've shown, the top 4 was not constant. If we compare this to the English Premier League, for example, the most commercial and marketable league in the world, you've got a Man City team that has won the league for the last 4 years in a row, 6 in the last 7 years. You cannot deny how exciting and entertaining the Premier League is, but to a larger extent, at least in recent times, it's become predictable. A top 6 in English football? It cannot exist in Serie A, and that's because of the competitive nature of Italian football. For example, in Napoli's title-winning season of 2022-23, yeah, that one was history in the making. As stated, Napoli won the league for the first time in 33 years. Incredible enough. Juventus failed to make the top 4 for the first time in over a decade. Crazy. But why am I bringing this up again? Is that season, the top 3 teams in the league, that's Napoli, Lazio and Inter, dropped a total of 18 points against the bottom 5 teams. Still not convinced? There have been 8 different teams in Serie A's top 4 over the last 5 seasons. The Premier League? 7. In the last 4 seasons, we've seen Inter Milan, AC Milan, Napoli and Inter again win the league. In England, it's Man City with an unprecedented quadruple. I could go on and on with these comparisons, but you'd probably understand the idea by now. The Italian Serie A, in one word, is unpredictable. Let's take this to a broader scope in terms of the top 5 leagues in Europe. In terms of title races, you already know what the deal is with the Premier League. This season should be an exception given City's current form, but in 6 of the last 7 seasons, the league has gone to Man City. In the Spanish La Liga, we've seen Barcelona and Real Madrid exchange the league between each other on numerous occasions, with the only exception being Atletico Madrid putting a blip in by winning the league in the 2020-21 season. The French Liga, PSG all through by the 2020-21 season where Lille won the league. The German Bundesliga, Bayer Leverkusen won their first title last season, but before that, Bayern had won the last 12 in a row. Serie A, well, starting from last season, Inter Milan, Napoli, AC Milan, Inter Milan and Juventus.
Italian football is next level. And anyone who doesn't watch Italian football, I highly suggest that
Italian
you go do
football's
it.
back,
Italian football is where it's fucking at.
Really?
It used to be La Liga, and I'm like the biggest Barca fan ever. But Italian football, it's just like so entertaining to watch. And I know that a lot of people will be like, oh, it's really not as a Farmers League, but it's Italy we're talking about. Like, we're talking about AC Milan, we're talking about Inter Milan, we're talking about like Napoli just won the league for the first time in 30 years. And they've been partying for like 4 weeks straight. They've just done that.
She might have a point though, and that's because this one has a crazy feel to it. This is one for the older audiences. In the 90s and early 2000s, Italian football dominated the European landscape. It wasn't just about the teams, but the quality of the teams as well, and the players they had on display. Think about the old Milan team of this era and the players they had. The likes of Marco van Basten, Ricardo Kaká, Andrei Shevchenko, Gennaro Gattuso, Paolo Maldini, Nesta. Or switch it up to Juventus and bring up the likes of Zinedine Zidane, Pavel Nedved, Alessandro Del Piero. Then move to teams like Roma, who had the likes of Francesco Totti and Gabriel Batistuta. Teams during this era of Italian football had players who could flip the switch and hurt any team. And that's what made the league that interesting. The point with this is that the nostalgic feeling and atmosphere attached to these players of old and the teams still runs into the present day. Look at this atmosphere for the Milan derby. All this tifo. Or even this.
This is what it's all about. This San Siro at its very, very best. I mean, it's set up for a great final. But to witness this tonight, look at it. Just look around. I'm genuinely mind blown by the stadium. Look at the celebrations. Look at the noise, the joy.
You've all been here before. You've all played games here before. Has it been like this?
Pretty sure we would have all been Micah Richards and the rest of the CBS crew watching the Milan derby at the San Siro, and it's the atmosphere in the stadium. But before you get the feeling it only happens when those two play, here's another example. The scenes you're witnessing aren't from a Fast and Furious movie. It's from the Derby della Capitale, Roma versus Lazio. Italian football has an unmatched atmosphere. Fans support teams not necessarily because of recent success, but because it's tradition, it's culture. Watching Serie A matches gives this feel of fans who would go to any lengths or do anything just to see their club win. We can never forget the scenes when Napoli won the league because that in itself was a moment. The celebrations in Naples lasted weeks. That's Italian football at its peak. And honestly, you'd struggle to find that anywhere else. So if we know the league is good and the atmosphere is crazy, what went wrong? It peaked for Italian football in 2010. After Inter Milan won the treble, it all went downhill. The Premier League gained commercial value, as did other leagues around them, but more importantly, the players that left created a huge gap in the quality of the league. Using 2010 to 2018 as a yardstick, the likes of Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Thiago Silva, Edinson Cavani, and Paul Pogba, players who were either at the peak or just about to experience it, left the league for different reasons. The point is, with this gap, Serie A unfortunately became a league that housed soon-to-be forgotten talent, or nostalgic players at best. Andrea Pirlo, Carlos Tevez, Francesco Totti, Giorgio Chiellini, Leonardo Bonucci, these names and many more were players who had become fixtures at their respective clubs, but also players you couldn't envision leaving unless it was going to be for big money or a move to wind up their careers. It all changed when this man arrived though. Ronaldo's move did more than just make Juventus a powerhouse. For Serie A, it was instrumental. We've already pointed out that Serie A did have more than decent teams and good players, but they lacked the media exposure teams in the top European leagues did. However, with Cristiano Ronaldo's arrival, that changed. Suddenly there was more coverage of the league, top broadcasters began to televise more Serie A matches, and in turn, more media coverage meant more people began to see just how good and exciting the league truly is. We're back to the current 2024-25 season now, and this one is pretty straightforward. What makes Serie A this exciting then? Well, apart from the league being an open competition between teams, it's also the fact that each team is unique. How? Well, the way Juventus plays under Thiago Motta isn't the way Atalanta plays, it isn't the way Inter Milan plays, and it isn't the way Roma play or Napoli. You've got an interesting mix of managers who bring up different styles across the pitch. Perhaps that's what prompted Zlatan Ibrahimovic to make the statement that Serie A is more tactical, and that's because you've got different managers with different ideas and systems. Under Simone Inzaghi, Inter Milan take a more conservative approach. Once they go ahead, or two, they're usually almost impossible to break down. Gianpiero Gasparini's Atalanta team, however, they're a mix of bold intensity, dynamic movements, and fluid attacking football. In one word, they're bold. And two results from the previous season highlight this. Beating Liverpool 3-0 at Anfield was a masterstroke, a ground where most teams go to and take the conservative approach by trying to defend because of the intense pressure Liverpool apply. But instead, Gasparini's Atalanta went toe-to-toe with Liverpool and came out on top. Or the Europa League final. Bayer Leverkusen lost just one league match all season, and that was it. An Ademola Lookman-inspired hat-trick to seal the win, but the way Atalanta played that evening, the goals could have easily come from anyone on the team. With Napoli this season under Antonio Conte, a man who has won the competition with both Juventus and Inter Milan in previous seasons, it's refreshing to see he's gone to Napoli and taken a different approach. Conte's teams used to be known for being efficient on the counter-attack, but this season with Napoli, he's mixed it up. Now, Napoli plays more structured and can hurt teams either centrally using a player like Lukaku as the target to feed off the inside forwards, or getting goal-scoring midfielders like Scott McTominay on the end of chances. I've gone through 3 different teams, and not one has the same idea or strategy used in games. It's virtually almost the same idea across the rest of the Italian top flight. You've got established managers like the ones we've mentioned earlier in Inzaghi, Gasparini and Antonio Conte. And now you've also got managers with prospects like Cesc Fabregas and his Como team, using constant movements and passes between fullbacks to put up a fight in the league this season, or another one of the surprise packages in the league.
Che abbiamo analizzato anche poco fa e altri piccoli episodi arbitrali hanno in qualche modo condizionato e innervosito la Fiorentina, che era partita bene nel primo tempo.
Ma io sinceramente sapete che degli arbitri non parlo e nemmeno questa volta lo faccio, perché gli errori fanno parte di questo gioco e ovviamente non li ho visti nemmeno, quindi non posso commentarli, però.
Rafael Palladino and his Fiorentina team, who amongst other things have utilised a lone army that's seen players like Eduardo Bove and Yassine Adli performing, as well as forgotten players like Moise Kean and David De Gea equally putting up numbers as well. If I brought this same context down to the Premier League, not quite sure it applies. Well, the reason? It feels like every top manager in the league is either trying to copy Pep Guardiola or has taken a page off his book. From the idea of inverted fullbacks to attacking in zones, using goalkeepers that are comfortable with the ball at their feet, playing out from the back. Honestly, right now, bar a few teams, the Premier League just feels like rinse and repeat stuff. In recent times, we've seen the rise of Italian teams in European football as a testament to the fact that the league is only getting better. The 2022-23 season was a mixed bag for Serie A. On one hand, they had 3 teams in the final of all 3 European competitions that year: Inter Milan in the Champions League, Roma in the Europa League, and Fiorentina in the Europa Conference League. They lost all 3, which is sad, but the idea here is to have 3 teams in this stage of the competition. Now that's incredible. Serie A will only continue to get better. Don't sleep on the quality in the league. Right now, you've got ballers like Rafael Leao, Nicola Barella, Dusan Vlahovic, Lautaro Martinez, Theo Hernandez, Federico Di Marco, and Mike Maignan. All these players and more aren't just talents with media hype. They've proved to be consistent in across various seasons as well. The only downside to Serie A in recent years has been the financial aspect of the game, or the lack of it. We've seen players like Lukaku leave for huge sums, and more recently, by the time this video comes out, Napoli could be saying goodbye to one of the stars of their 2022-23 title-winning campaign, Ivica Kvaratskhelia, for around €70 million in reported fees. That's the downside, the fact that talents can easily be priced away for mega fees because clubs in the league need to always maintain a profit. But that's just one blip of how exciting and entertaining Serie A is. You just cannot write off the pure quality in the league. Proper teams, unique teams, incredible players, unbelievable atmospheres, even in games that aren't exactly box office, and overall, a proper league that's worth the hype. Still thinking about the 90s era of football again, and honestly, Serie A is where it was at. From incredible teams to almost superhuman players, this era of football was crazy. But when it gets down to it, was the 90s era of football better than the 2000s, the 2010s, or even the 2020s? You can find out in the next video which football era was truly the best.